This is a story of the main Allied base in the southwest Pacific area and of the British people who maintain it. This is the Commonwealth of Australia. There are 3 million square miles of it, almost as big as the United States. But there are only 7 million people in it, practically all white, and 97% of them Anglo-Saxon stock. 7 million people aren't nearly enough for a country as big as Australia, but they're enough to make a nation. The world knows the fighting Australian, but it knows a lot less about the country he comes from, the country he fights for, the country he has made in 150 years. We carved our heritage from the virgin bush, just as the American people did. Only we started the job almost 2 centuries later than they. This is our land, our Australia of the wide horizons, of the modern cities, of the promise of a magnificent tomorrow. It's the land we love, that we fight for, that we work for. This is industrial Australia of today.
Yes, I'm an Australian. A civilian in this war, working on the home front. I've got a wife and 3 kids, and I reckon we're just an average Australian family. By trade, I'm a motor mechanic. I used to be the foreman of the biggest garage in our town, and a good unionist. Life was pretty good in 1939. We'd lifted ourselves out of the Depression years. I was paying off my house and hoped to have a garage of my own someday. Of course, there was always some crisis or other in Europe, but in a big sunny country like ours, a crisis 12,000 miles away seemed as far off as the moon and the stars. We reckoned these dictators were bluffing. And one Friday evening in September, a newsboy came yelling into the shop. We found the bluff was over. So was the world we knew. I went to work making aircraft. Britain and America couldn't spare us the planes we wanted to buy. Do you know, we never even made a motorcycle engine before, but we started right in. Not long after the war hit us, we were making aircraft, complete. Today, we are making all we can. But they're just a small percentage of the aircraft the Allies need in this part of the World War. We're making the engines, too. 1,200 horsepower jobs, under license from America. I've never worked such long hours in my life before. When I read that one of our Beaufort torpedo bombers has blown a Jap ship to hell, and I think that I made part of that bomber with my own hands, well, that's something. In our factories, 3 in every 4 workers are making munitions, aircraft, some kind of war supplies. 1 in every 4 is a woman. And then there's the old men, and the retired men, and the white-collar boys, who'd never driven anything harder than a pen until they got their call-up notices. Even the blind have been trained to war jobs. We're all fellow travelers now, and we all catch the same bus in the morning. And we've all got the same kind of grease under our fingernails. It's the kind of grease they use in the war factories. Yes, it puts a mark on a man, a democratic mark. Something we'll all be proud of when this war is won. And we go back to being W. Smith, Esquire, retired, or William Smith, schoolmaster, or Bill Smith, the bloke that brings the ice. There's nobody to spare in Australia today, and that's why 3 out of 5 of the boys and men between 14 and 65 years of age are in the fighting services, or in war work. 4 years ago, I'd have called any man a liar who suggested we could make cruiser tanks in Australia. But they're making them all right. I've seen them on the proving grounds, and the people have seen them rolling down the city streets. And how we'd all like to see them rolling right into Tokyo. Men who belong to my union were switched to making 3.7 ACAC guns. And when a Jap Scout plane came right over my house the other night, some of these 3.7 shells burst right under his nose. And that gave me a lot of personal satisfaction. Here's why. I'm one of the 90,000 Australians who've enlisted in the Volunteer Defence Corps, Australia's home guard, and we're manning anti-aircraft defences, coastal guns and searchlights. We leave in the regular army a lot of other jobs, too. My mates and I know what we're working for and fighting for. Our wives and our kids and our homes. And the right to live our own lives, our own way. That goes for all of us. For me, and for number 2 in our gun. That's him there. He happens to be a manager of a munitions factory. Aren't you, Harry?
That's right. I've been running this factory for 2 years. Before that, I was in charge of a cosmetics factory. Cosmetics. I'm an engineer, and statistics are my hobby. The growth of Australian munitions industries is something we're all proud of. When Hitler started this war, we had only 4 munition factories in Australia. When Japan came in, we had only 8. Today, we're operating 25, completing 24 more. And there are hundreds of munition annexes run by private enterprise. Even a little fellow with a backyard lathe is making something for the war effort. It's money that lubricates the wheels, of course. We're keeping so many wheels turning that we're the highest taxed people in the British Commonwealth. And I reckon that about makes us the highest taxed people in the non-Axis world. The higher incomes are taxed 18 6 in the pound. That's 92.5% of what the man earns. Tough? Sure it's tough. But you can't have security without paying for it. Half the national income is being spent on the war. Of course, when you look at the range of our production, you get an idea where the money's going. Now take the Owen gun. A young AIF soldier invented it. It's one of the cheapest submachine guns in the world, and one of the best. We took the British Sten, improved it, we think so anyway, and called it the Osten. It's the goods, too. The Japs found that out when they ran up against them both in New Guinea. We're making, for instance, the entire equipment of infantry and mechanized divisions, and are now tackling the job of making our armored divisions 100% Australian equipped, too. We're making Bofors, quick-firing ack-ack guns, armored tank hulls made in a single casting, eliminating riveting, a formula other Allied nations adopted. Armor plate for tanks, armored cars, gun and troop carriers, universal carriers, scout and armored cars, destroyers and corvettes for the Australian and Indian navies, freighters, other vessels. Six-pounder anti-tank guns, aircraft bombs and naval mines, radio equipment, range finders and gun predictors, parachutes, field guns, including 25-pounders, searchlights, munitions for every type of gun we use, including heavy naval armament, pistols and rifles, clothing and all personal equipment for Army, Navy, and Air Force, and, oh, there are 100 more. Disaster put us where we are. The disaster of Dunkirk, when Britain stood like one small, unyielding rock in a wild ocean. The rest of the world thought Britain was licked. We knew she'd only just started to fight. We knew it because we're British, too. Dunkirk week. The week Australians stormed the recruiting offices. The week industrial production commenced its leap upward. The week we stripped ourselves of arms and started to send the old lady all we had, and wished to God we could make it 100 times more. It's a funny thing that we're a free, completely independent people with no ties to England whatever, save those of blood. But they happen to be the strongest ties in the world. We worked day and night. We worked like hell. We made rifles and ammunition and machine guns and field guns and army boots and steel plate. And we sent them to Bombay and to Batavia, to Suva and to Singapore, wherever our allies needed them. We're still working like hell. We could produce more, but 750,000 of our men are in the fighting services. We haven't got enough men. We haven't got enough machines. Some of our products we can export to our allies, but we can't make enough tanks, enough planes for ourselves. We know that. But we know, too, that Britain and America will help us out to the limit. This factory I'm running, it produces tools and gauges. We had only 3 factories like this in Australia 4 years ago. Now we've got 188. They're making 26,000 tools and gauges each day. We're working out in the country. Decentralization means safety. Yes, I've made technicians out of farmhands. At the same time, I know that I've made many old bones ache. Oh, there's old man Stewart driving in the cows. You know, old Stewart worked hard for 50 years to make his farm. He doesn't mind this factory being built slap up against it, but he does miss those 3 boys of his. They're away fighting. So, old man Stewart and old lady Stewart and their 2 granddaughters do the milking. And the old chap pretends he's 30 again. Look at him there. He's past that kind of work, but there's nobody else to do it. And there's plenty like old man Stewart.
Times are tough, all right, but we old blokes have been through tough times before, fighting fires and floods, working and battling on the land till we get a place like this together, fit for our sons to come and carry on. And then the war breaks out. Well, of course, the boys want to go. It's no good arguing, for as they say, the old folks and the kids can look after the place. We've got a job to do. And while they're away, we've got a job to do. There's our fighting men up there in the Southwest Pacific area, Australians and Americans, and the Empire troops up there in the Middle East and India. They've got to be fed and looked after, and we are going to do it. You see, all the United Nations have a food problem. Cheese and rice and eggs and other good food are wanted everywhere. England has had to ask us to give her all we could. And then we've got all those thousands of Allied troops in Australia to feed too. Like our own soldiers, they've got to get the best. And England's got to get the best too. So we've either got to tighten up on our rationing or grow a darn sight more food. At present, we're doing both. A terrible lot depends on us men on the land, and there's not enough of us by thousands, and we're not as young as we used to be. So we're darn glad to see hundreds of girls in the Land Army uniforms coming into the country districts. They were typists and shop girls and domestic servants, and some hadn't to work before. Can you believe that? They hadn't worked before? But they learn fast, and many's the crop they've saved bringing it in time. Many's the farm they've kept going. Always remember, the fighting men come first. What does it matter if we go a bit shorter? Potatoes and rice and oranges and even milk. Talking about milk. Hey! You with that big clanking machine there. You want to turn the milk sour in the cows?
God, keep your shirt on, Pop. Him talking to me about milk. You know, for 12 years, I had the longest milk run in Australia. Yeah, our apartment houses upstairs and down, and the old feet were getting flatter every year. No one in the Army tossed me out without looking at my birth certificate. Well, they'd have tossed me out again if they had. You bet I'm an Australian. Why, every day I shove around a few hundred tons of Australia with this thing here. And think if I do. You know, Gertie and me, we're sort of getting fond of each other, we are. We're doing a job for General MacArthur, with some slight assistance, of course. We're building an aerodrome. We're working for the Allied Works Council that's building all those military roads and the aerodromes and the camps for the Aussies and the Yanks. One day I gets me call up, 55, but I gets it just the same. They sent me a girl, mind you, and I showed her how to run the milk round. Then I went to school. Just imagine me at school learning to drive Goodyear. Next thing, a lot of us go up north, and did we ship some dirt there? Why, one job we did cost 6 million quid. Pounds to you. They do tell me that the first year it was in action, this Allied Works Council I'm toiling for built 5,000 miles of military roads. Why, it must be all of that distance from here to Tokyo. A team of us went out and built the north-south all-weather road right down the middle of Australia. Boy, was that a race, beating the flies and the mosquitoes and the dust, shoving a few million tons of dirt around with every grader and scoop and bulldozer we could get. 4,000 of us made that road from the bottom of Australia to the top. I haven't got the dust out of my system yet. What I'm doing right now is building a new airfield. Not on me Pat Malone, mind you. 2,000 other fellows are in it, too, shifting 500,000 tons of earth. They started in, lots of them, the men from behind the counters and the blokes who'd been sitting back on their dividends. They had beautiful blisters on their lily white hands. They've got corns on them now. Yeah, as if Uncle Doug MacArthur wanted us to dig a hole right through to Berlin in a hurry, we'd oblige. A great bloke, that. You know, I'm not sure that I want to go back to being a milkman. I rather like this job. It's a bit tough, but it's interesting and not too dangerous. Not like the job me daughter Gwenny's doing. Now, Gwenny, she's in munitions. Yeah, she's in one of those slap-up munition factories, and she's making TNT and things like that.
Yes, that's me, Gwenny. Yes, Gwenny from the beauty parlour. A permanent wait for 15 bob. And yes, madam, I'll have you under the dryer in 1 minute. Oh, so-and-so you. Why worry? Beauty parlour's closed down, and here we are. Some of the girls who used to operate it, some of the glamour girls who used to patronize it. When they said 1 war factory worker in 4 had to be a woman, I said to myself, it's you from munitions, Gwenny. And they put me on to pouring TNT into shells. I said, that's all right with me. Funny stuff, this, you know. Goes off the boom. Last war, women couldn't do an awful lot, no matter how much they wanted to. This time it's different. Women are in the war, doing all sorts of jobs. You'd be staggered at some of the things they've had a crack at, and made a success of, too. Even heavy laboring work in steelworks, they've had to. There are the services, too. The Women's Army, Women's Auxiliary Air Force, Women's Royal Australian Naval Service, serving in operational stations. In the danger zone, too. Plenty of them. I figured out it's not much good having the boyfriend in destroyers if the Navy hasn't got enough shells to fire at the Japs. Every girl who works here's got somebody in the Army or the Navy or the Air Force. A brother or a father or an uncle or a boyfriend like Bill.
Oh, dear. Yeah, sweetheart. We get around. We get around. We get to New York, see? And it's right about the Statue of Liberty. Blimey, it's nearly as big as it looks in the movies. And the first fella I meet in New York says, so you're an Australian, huh? And I say, yeah, I am. And he says, never knew you Australians had a Navy. And then, sweetheart, I tell him. I tell him about Waterhen, the destroyer I'm serving in on the Mediterranean beat, and how we run the Suicide Alley Patrol, Merza Matruh to Tobruk for 3 months, and about the day that 20 Stukas blew hell out of us off Tobruk. So down goes Waterhen. I tell him about Sydney, and how she fights 88 actions in the Mediterranean, and how she chases the Itai's crack cruiser Colleone and sinks her, and how Sydney gets hers in the Indian Ocean. That wasn't so good, Gwenny. That wasn't so good. I tell him about Perth, and how she beats off 77 Stukas off Malta and fights at Cape Matapan in Greece, and how she takes off the Tommy soldiers from the beaches at Crete, dive-bombed all the time, and how she's in company with the Americans and the Dutch in the Java Sea battle, and gets hers there. I tell him how Canberra's with the American squadron off the Solomons, and how she's lost there. I tell him about the destroyers and the sloops that are gone, about the 8 ships we've lost out of the 14 we had when the war began. And I says, boy, have we got a Navy or have we? He looks at me hard and says, you sure had a Navy, son. Then he says, brother, I feel like giving you New York. And blow me down if he don't try to.
Would you mind? The place is a bit crowded.
Oh, here, give me those.
Thanks.
Park right here, son. Just in?
Hush. The enemy listens. How do I know Hitler ain't under the table?
Okay with me, pal. Probably convoyed you anyway. You don't know and I can't tell you. Silent service, me.
When?
You didn't convoy me in, pal. You see, I came in on a raft. All in a day's work, I suppose. Stewed once, torpedoed 3 times. And here I am, fresh out of the Pacific, on my way to Melbourne, to give the missus and kids a treat. All I hope they remember me.
Oh, I know it's your job and all that, but don't you think you deserve to...
What, a spell ashore? Landlubber's job. Listen. Merchant Navy, that means. Not only the Aussie Merchant Navy, but the merchant navies of the whole of the blooming United Nations. Yeah, I know, we got no gold braid or epaulets. A flannel shirt and a sweat rag, that's our style. Plugging along in a convoy, cocking one eye up for bombs and the other one down for torpedoes. That's how it is with us. For the first couple of years, we're mostly taking stuff from here up the world. Troops to the fighting fronts, Aussie airmen to England, food and munitions and such like. Tojo ordered that a lot, and now we're starting to bring stuff back. Tojo's going to take some stopping, you know. But carrying the food and the munitions and the soldiers where they're needed, that's our job in this war. A cargo of meat and butter and cheese out of Melbourne, Australia, that's going to mean plenty to a hell of a lot of people in Liverpool, England. And a cargo of aircraft motors out of Frisco for Sydney is going to mean bad news to a hell of a lot of Japs in New Guinea. Somebody's got to do this carrying job. It just happens that I'm one of the mob that's doing it.
You know what I think about blokes like you?
What?
Blokes like you that do the fetching and carrying in this war for all of us. Blokes who take all the risks with precious little chance of heading back. I wish I had half your guts, that's what. Here's mud in your eye, sailor.
More grit in my teeth.
Well, old boy, it's your country, isn't it?
Yeah. We captured it from the British.
Really? But that was before we had an RAF, you know.
Now, listen, don't you give me that business about the RAF. I've had it. You've been bashing my ear for months.
Section. Scramble.
Good hunting, Jim.
You keep your own head down, big stiff.
Leave it to the RAF. I've got 5 shillings to say that my fella gets one first.
Okay. And that makes 15 bob you owe me.
That'll be right, too, Dick. Here, just a minute. You know, what you really want is a nugget. Yeah.
He'll be okay. He always is.
Hell, he's got 14 confirmed victories, the boss has.
He'll be okay.
Yeah, but aren't you forgetting something, Tiny?
That being?
They're flying Spitfires.
I think you got something there, Cobber. I think you got everything there.
Hiya, guys. I got $5 to say.
I know. That it's my fellow or his.
Your fella, nothing. Mine, buddy. Mine.
Yeah, $5. How much is that in real money, Tiny?
Oh, about 30 bob.
Teddy Bob and a light. You're on.
It's a bet.
A bet.
So few owe so much to so many.
So few owe so much.
That's a libel. That's a libel. What do you...
And so, Tojo, reluctantly, we bid you welcome to sunny Darwin.
Yeah, they caught me scraping my kisser. Listen, I seem to remember you. Remember the first day the Japs raided Darwin?
Yeah. Lying on the aerodrome. Flat out like lizards drinking. Getting strafed and watching our blokes and your blokes going into it. Plenty game they were, too. And the kites they were flying. Not nearly enough of them.
You said it.
Our blokes flat out at 150 miles an hour in Wirraways because they had nothing else to fly. Oh, that was bad, Brooklyn. Damn bad.
The Japs sure made a mess that day.
Yeah, I seen what they did to Darwin. Fair made me homesick, it did.
Yeah, now the Japs know they're in a war. Now they're running into a team. Yanks, RAF, Dutchmen, and Aussies. They're finding out exactly just what does happen when a Spitfire tangles with a Zero. And what happens when a Lightning gets on a Mitsubishi's tail.
Or a bullfighter that gets assigned to a strafing mission, eh?
Yeah, or a flying fortress or a Liberator drops a big egg just where they don't want it.
Yeah. Now the Japs are beginning to know. And they're gonna go on learning until we fight them and we bomb them right back to their lousy Japan. And then through it and out the other side. Just so long as we got the fighters and the bombers to do it with.
Well, I reckon between the lot of us, we got the rest of what it takes.
That'll be 5 shillings, please. On $5.
Come on.
Cut up from the rest of the mob.
Yep. That's how it looks. Only the nips for playmates.
Ah, what the hell, anyway. I remember I was held up for 5 days near the Tobruk perimeter once. And gee, it looked like curtains, too. No, I used to think to myself, now, if this was Sydney...
If this was Sydney, where I'd be right now.
Hold your horses, son. I used to think of Sydney and say to myself, it's a big city, all right. $1.25 million people in it. And I'd take a look around at the Tobruk scenery. Then I knew why I was there. To keep the kind of thing that made that kind of ruin out of my town.
You've been around, huh?
That's no lie, son. My mob was in Greece. That was tough, plenty tough. Then Crete. And no Sunday school picnic either. And they moved us down into Syria. That was short and sharp, but no pushover, mind you. But the Western Desert. We got to know that little place like our own backyard. Yeah, I remember the first time the boys went in there. They went in singing. And that's how it started. The big cleanup. But don't get me wrong, brother. It wasn't just our show. It was everybody's. You look at the New Zealanders. Why, those boys have been so long in that desert country there that even the Arabs are getting jealous.
Yeah, and the Tommies and the Scotties.
Yeah. Those fighting sons of guns from India. Those boys don't get their dollars in the Sunday supplements. We reckon they only get leaving between wars. Still, they keep on taking it and dishing it out. And hell, we're proud to fight alongside of them. And you take Malaya. Our 8th Division went in there. By cripes, the mob was jealous when they first heard of it. Singapore. Rajas and rickshaws and... well, you know how it turned out.
Japs. More Japs and still more Japs.
And not enough planes. That must never happen again, buddy. Tommies and the Indians and the Aussies. They're prisoners now. But we're going back for them, all right. I had a brother there.
Yeah, pal. I know. Like Bataan. I had a brother there.
You did? And you're not looking for any reasons why we stand the heat and the rain and the fever and the Tommy guns in this bloody jungle? We stop the Jap right here. If we don't, he'll be kicking in the front door of your home and mine.
Check.
So we stop him here. You and us. And we go after him. We go after him till we get our boys back. All of our boys. We put the German and the Jap where they bloody well belong.
they come, pal. Here we go.
Fields of Ballarat in the year 1854, one Peter Lawler led the diggers when they took up arms against injustice of the time. The flag they flew was the Southern Cross. For the first time, its stars were blazoned upon a flag of liberty. Lawler and the 500 men who fought with him at Eureka Stockade struck for democracy, a blow that still rings through Australian history. This is the oath they swore. It is the oath of Eureka. It is the oath which today binds every Australian. We swear by the Southern Cross to stand truly by each other and fight to defend our rights and liberties. To stand truly by each other until the long night of war is over and the dawn breaks upon the brave free world of tomorrow.
Swagman camped by a billabong under the shade